I'm now being joined by Doug Brooks, Arise News analyst. Hi, Doug. Thank you for joining us on Arise America.
Good evening.
Right. So it's beginning to look like what it is. They say that if it looks like a fish, smells like a fish, and tastes like a fish, inevitably or invariably, it is indeed a fish. Donald Trump is really now looking like an emperor or a bully. What's your business with Canada's partnership with China if you don't want to do business with Canada and the country is looking out the window to see who is ready to open their arms to the country? What's President Donald Trump's business with Canada and China?
Well, you're absolutely correct. He really has no business between what their relations are. Trump has basically taken this relationship that the United States has with Canada, which has been one of the closest relationships in the world. We've had an integrated economy. Until 9/11, you didn't even need a passport to go to Canada. You could go back and forth across the border. There are some towns in New England that are basically split between Canada and the United States. Basically, since the War of 1812, since they solved that war, that we've had a demilitarized border. We've had an incredibly close relationship with Canada. Our sports teams, our sports leagues all have Canadian teams. So it's just we've had this incredibly close relationship, and now Trump has decided that Canada, needs to be part of the United States. It needs to supplicate itself to the United States, and the Canadians are not super keen on being part of the United States, especially under President Trump. So. Mark Carney's comments lately in at the World Economic Forum in Davos, which were very well accepted around the world, made it clear that the United States has gone rogue and that the rest of the world needs to take that into account. So one of these things is Canada is now talking to China to set up better trade relations with China. And honestly, that's the right thing to do for Canada and probably much of the world. And it's unfortunate. The United States used to be the leader of the world in freedom and in economic and in trade. And now Trump has reversed that.
Right, Doug. Now, what about the America First agenda that President Trump has been touting? Is he not getting distracted by the day if he's meddling into other countries' affairs just because he doesn't want Canada to live above the waters? Is he not getting distracted already?
Well, I mean, you're correct. I mean, Canada's first idea of this MAGA movement, MAGA being Make America Great Again, one of the points of it was that we were not going to be involved around the world. We were going to get out of conflicts around the world. We were not going to be providing aid or anything around the world. And basically, we were going to focus on just the United States. And unfortunately, that does not seem to be Trump's agenda. As we've seen in Venezuela, in Iran, and other places, he's basically been using military power and coercive power, and on trade, he's been basically assaulting other countries with really high tariffs that are both taxes on Americans and also constrain trade. And it's really doing far more damage to the United States as well as the world economy. And whereas the United States, again, had been a leader in democracy and freedom, now it's looking more and more like the bully in the world. And Canada, unfortunately, at this time, is right next door and has the most to lose. And so we're seeing this situation.
Now, how realistic is a 100% tariff on Canada?
You know, it's probably not very realistic. I mean, if you consider that even some of the vehicles made in Detroit by American car makers, a lot of the parts are from Canada. Again, we had an incredibly integrated economy. So to charge 100% tariffs on the incredible amount of trade between the two countries is ridiculous. And I think Trump's going to figure this out when the stock market reacts to this on Monday, because it seems to what we've seen of Trump's behavior, the one thing that really gets his attention is when the stock market crashes by 5 or 10%. So we may see something pretty drastic, and then Trump will have to roll that back. But another thing to keep in mind on Trump's tariffs, which has been his favorite weapon, is that this has gone to the Supreme Court. And back in November of last year, they had hearings on these tariffs to see whether it's even legal for Trump to do what he's doing with these tariffs. And the Supreme Court did not seem favorable to this. It probably violates the U.S. Constitution. So what may happen pretty much any day is that his ability to use tariffs may be revoked. And basically, he's going to have to find some other way of bullying other countries. So we'll see what happens. Trump has been very clear that he needs to have these tariffs to carry out his policies, but he may lose that ability to use them.
Okay, do you think that things could have turned out differently, panned out in a different way, if not for the speech that Mark Carney gave at Davos pushing against the world powers?
Carney's speech was excellent, and I think it will go down in history as a real change in direction. Whereas the United States has sort of been underpinned global trade and led, I think, the revolution in democracy since the Second World War. That's really done very well in the world since then. Now we have a leader in the U.S. that is basically turned his back on that and is challenging democratic rights in the United States. And as well as celebrating some of the world's most largest dictators. For example, he's a big friend with Vladimir Putin in Russia. And also in Hungary, you have an authoritarian leader there that he's very good friends with. And his new board of peace that Trump has created basically has been reaching out to a number of the authoritarians around the world. And it's a reversal of U.S. policy. And so Mark Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos was really a game changer. It's basically saying, laying out for Europeans and others that it's time to stop I guess, playing up to Trump, and it's time to take your own direction. The world needs to find a different model for the next, I guess, century, or at least until the United States gets its act together, which could be decades. So I think it's Mark Carney has turned out to be, I think, one of the most clear and intelligent people that have brought up answers to the Trump problem.
And indeed, Canada and China have reached a trade deal, which includes electric vehicles. What we don't know, it's not clear yet if that deal has come into effect. But in any case, they've reached a deal. And so how soon do you think President Trump might want to also effect his threat?
You know, that's interesting because the United States was a leader in electric vehicles. We did have government subsidies, and so the Tesla and other vehicles were being created in the United States, and the technology and the engineering was coming from the United States. China has their own electric car industry, of course, which is doing quite well. Right. But since Trump came in, he's ended those government subsidies for the electric cars and really kind of pushed out the idea that we'd be using electric cars. So essentially all the engineering and leadership has been ceded to China at no cost to the Chinese. Essentially now they are becoming the leaders of electric vehicles and alternative energy sources. And that's basically because Trump has decided the United States is getting out of that business, which may be the future of energy. So yeah, for the Canadians to sidle up to the Chinese on that is a smart move by them.
So are you saying, in other words, Doug, that President Trump's threat of 100% tariffs on Canadian goods coming into the U.S. Might have been born out of fear of what lies ahead for the American market with this trade deal between Canada and China, rather than a resentment for Canada?
I think it is more to do with Trump's frustration that Canada won't buckle under to his personal whims. This is not really a national thing. I don't think. I think this is one of the less least popular policies of Trump. Americans love Canada. We love going to Canada for vacations. We love Canadians, and millions of Canadians come down to the United States or have been coming down to the United States for vacations or to retire in Florida. We really have a very, very close relationship with Canada, and for Trump, really on a very personal level, to create these problems with Canada is very unpopular. I mean, Canadians have absolutely rejected this, and to a very high degree in the even in the United States, there's no support for this kind of policy. You have these sort of small, what, 30% of the U.S. population that is, always going to follow Trump no matter what. But even in that crowd, that America First crowd, attacking Canada is not that popular. So it's a very strange policy by Trump, and it really seems to be driven by his personal resentment about Canada's leader and about Canada daring to say that they're independent of the United States and they have no intention of becoming the 51st state.
And of course, you would agree with me also that the relationship between US and Canada had actually been improving in recent months, if not for President Trump's push to take control of Greenland, and of course, his comment about NATO.
Yeah, well, Greenland, I think he's backed off of Greenland, and again, I think that comes down to the stock market reaction to basically Trump threatening violence against a one of our closest allies in a NATO country. Yeah, that's just not going to fly too well, and I think Trump was forced to back down from that while he was in Davos and say and agree to essentially what we already have, which is a NATO. Greenland is part of Denmark, is part of NATO, and the United States has permission to set up military bases wherever they want in Greenland. This has always been true, and that seems to be the agreement that Trump managed to squeeze out of NATO, which is essentially the status quo. Nothing has changed on that. Um, but again, I think, this whole Canadian thing is even more damage to the NATO alliance, which has been, the world's, I think, most successful alliance in history, and one that's really underpinned a lot of ending a lot of conflicts, such as in the Balkans and other places, and created a very strong, essentially, alliance of democracies that has been very beneficial for the globe. And Trump is undermining this with his Canada policies and his threats to Greenland. I think even when push comes to shove, even the Republicans that have been supporting him in Congress, they're going to back off on this. I mean, I think they've been pretty clear. They support NATO, even the Republicans. There's no interest, I think, in Congress of really withdrawing from that, except for a few of the real, what we'd call bootlicks, the ones that are really support Trump. Basically, I think Trump's pushing very unpopular policies on there, and whether it'll come back to haunt him, we'll have to see. But I think these policies, the Greenland policies, uh, even more, I think, unpopular than Trump's relationship with Epstein, which is, again, that's also coming to a head, is the fact that he's having to deal with the Epstein files, which Congress has ordered him to release, and apparently Trump is in these files, and that he's engaged in pedophile in his past, and so. That could be very damaging for him too, as well, and perhaps one of the reasons he's so frustrated that everything he tries, Greenland, Canada, whatever, seems to backfire on him.
At the just concluded World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, President Trump's speech came just after Mark Carney's. And then Trump goes on to say, Canada lives because of the US. I know that's not true. I don't know what you think. But then, how would he make such a blanket statement, a really, I must say, bogus claim about Canada? What exactly is he talking
Well,
about?
and Carney said, responded exactly a lot, saying what makes Canada great is being Canadian, and I think Carney, who was a marginally popular leader in Canada, has gained a lot of Canadian support because he pushes back on this. He says Canada's great because we're Canada. I think the contrast with the U.S. is pretty stark that these days because of if you saw Trump's speech, this rambling, monotone speech where he went through all his grievances for the past 20 years, kind of ran them out and boasted, insulted neighbors, insulted NATO, insulted Europeans. It was a crazy speech, and the contrast with Mark Carney's very sharp, very pointed, and very thoughtful speech on sort of a post America world, post America as a leader world. I think is Trump sort of learning that there are people out there that are a lot smarter than him and have a much better idea of what's going on.
Now, don't let's forget that there are three countries in this conversation, the US, Canada, and China. I don't know if you saw the footage of that meeting between the Chinese President Xi and Xi Jinping and McCartney. If you saw the expression, the facial expression of Xi Jinping on that day, what does it mean? What does all this mean anyway for China?
So China, I think both China and Russia are gaining from this leadership failure in the United States. And right now, I mean, China is not a liberal democracy by any stretch of the imagination. However, it does have a reasonably free economy. And I think it has a sort of a brilliant population that many had been, of course, moving to the United States where they can be immigrate and be more free. That's kind of ending. But they have just a huge economy, and for essentially their greatest economic rival to essentially implode like the United States is, it's a real advantage for China, and they have the capability to essentially fill the gaps that the vacuum that is being left as U.S. leadership collapses. So this is basically on a silver platter for China. They have the most to gain on this. Russia, which of course has been facing NATO or NATO support for its Ukraine war, for them having the United States essentially back out of NATO, or as much as Trump can pull them out of NATO, means that Russia has a chance of essentially winning or doing better in their conflict. So this implosion of U.S. leadership is benefiting both of the United States' greatest rivals. I think it's a problem for not just Americans, but for the entire world or the free world.
Well, let's now try to wrap all this up. To be candid, this is really painful because you and I know that the US and Canada had built a really remarkable relationship over many decades. Do you see these two countries mending wars anytime soon?
Probably not until Trump leaves office. I think he's created enough problems. His personality and the way he throws around his weight with America's closest allies and neighbors is just almost irreversible as long as he's president. So until he departs office, I don't think we're going to see much improvement. And if his whole MAGA movement continues, if they win the next election somehow, then I don't think we're going to see much improvement with Canada. But we have a 3,000-mile border. What is that? 5,000 kilometers, some border that is still largely undefended. And we have been peaceful neighbors for a long time. It's sort of inconceivable that it's going to be armed, or that we'd go to anything, any sort of conflict. It's just inconceivable. I think even if Trump were to move that direction, the Republicans in Congress would finally push back on that. But in terms of repairing the relationship, I don't think it'll ever be the same. It'll probably be decades before we can get back to the level of integration and partnership that we had before. And that's really, really unfortunate for both our countries.
So my final word to you on this conversation. Let me see, Doug, if you've got the crystal ball. So where do you see all this ending?
It'll end when Trump leaves office. And yeah, repairing it, then we'll take decades after that. I don't think we can go much beyond that because we'll have to see what the situation is. If Trump fills out his term and then is followed by another Trump-like entity like his vice president or someone similar, then I think the damage will continue to get worse. But hopefully we'll have somebody who's a little smarter and a little bit more in tune with world events and perhaps not quite as senile, as some would say, so that they can actually make speeches like Mark Carney's was at the World Economic Forum, which was brilliant.
Well said. What's now left for me now, Doug, is to say a big thank you to you, and let's see how all this will pan out.